So, and if you could talk a little bit about the terroir, where Szekszárd actually is, and maybe your parcels or your specific soil types, maybe, because if I read well, or if my memory doesn't disappoint me, that you have basically a more like lust-like kind of soil and the kind of hot climate, but I think you could tell it in more detail.
Sure. So we are in Hungary. Hungary is in the Carpathian Basin. And I think this Carpathian Basin is like a bigger, this is the bigger boundaries of what we are talking about. Like you could talk of the Mediterranean and its influence and your role in it. Let's say in Italy, we are in this Carpathian Basin as the bigger lot, and Szekszárd is just by the Danube. We are around 140 kilometers to the south from Budapest, and we are practically on the meeting point of two different landscapes. So towards the east, as you can see on my little slide as well, towards the east, the big Hungarian plains starts just here, actually, below us. And towards the west, there is the Trans-Danubian Hills, which continue towards the Alps, basically. And all this land from the south of the Lake Balaton is the Trans-Danubian Hills. And these are this beautiful, quite a charming landscape. It's these rolling hills of like 200 to 300 meters in height. And we are on the first one of them. The wine region itself stretches just on the eastern limit of this Trans-Danubian Hills. So it's north-south, around 20 kilometers in length. And we are in the northern part of it, it's next to the city of Szekszárd. What's also quite unique is that this is quite a young sedimentary loess soils that covers the Szekszárd Hills in the depth of like 20 to 50 meters. So in most of the places, loess is the primary soil that you just see. We have done some excavations. I can show you some pictures of it, and really most of it, if you go down to 2 meters, even you see loess, and that's it. And there are some spots which are unique in it. And also, climatically, what's interesting is that those vineyards which are open towards the big plain, they get much more heat influence. And the more you go inside the valleys and the more you go into covered and more protected valleys, those get much colder nights and protected from the wind often. So we have some of those vineyards as well, and that's also something that we show through our lineup, how some of the more hot and more sun influenced vineyards can work, and some of the more protected ones. And this is a picture of where we are. I'm sitting just on the top of the first valley here, where our press house is. As you can see towards the east, the big plain starts, and this is the city of Szekszárd here below us. And we are working in parallel valleys, which are facing south, these 5 valleys, and we have some vineyards on the valley tops as well.
They have a south-facing vineyard?
We have, the valleys themselves are south-facing. So our vineyards are mostly southeast or southwest, and some of them are on the hilltops. And then
the altitude, how would you say that?
Altitude is around 260 to 280 meters. 286 is the highest point of the wine region, and it's in our vineyard. Anyway, it's not very high. And here you can see this typical loess. We have, depending on the spot, but quite high amount of limestone. We have this little so-called loess dolls, which are like limestone built together through the precipitation, so through the water that brings it down. And but we don't really notice the limestone influence, I would say, in the vines. So, and on some points you have these red clay or brown clay. We have noticed it so far in 2 of our vineyards in some spots, which is very interestingly different. So you notice quite obviously that it's more compacted, more closed of structures. It breaks like in these in cube forms. And we also noticed that the grapevines roots get more of the anthocyanin, so a bit more pinkish color. But I don't really know where this really leads us. So we are not at that point that we can make really striking terroir or like soil influences in our vines. What we really see is that from the crop itself, that the vineyards do have different styles, and I think this is mostly due to the microclimatic differences.
So thanks for this beautiful terroir introduction. I would say that as a Hungarian, the obvious question would be, what is maybe the difference between Szekszárd and Villány? If you could just a little bit elaborate on that, because I think that's maybe there are maybe two or three true red wine regions, what is really known maybe internationally in Hungary, and Villány is really close to you. So if you could just maybe differentiate a little bit, what is maybe the difference?
Mm-hmm. So Villány is similarly historic in a different role, I think, due to much bigger influence of the church, and Villány was more involved in the world dynamics somehow. Szekszárd was always much more peasant. The climatic difference is that Villány is facing south from the city of Pécs. They are really facing towards Croatia in this position. I think they have higher Mediterranean influence, and they have more diversity in their soils as well so far, what I have known. They have some very strikingly poor soils, and also they on some spots they have loess as well. And Szekszárd is, I think, a bit smaller. The valleys are smaller. It's more mellow, the landscape, and I think our wines as well. So Villány is probably more powerful of a character. Usually, I would suggest more tannins, and maybe because of work and approach of the winemakers as well. But Villány is always more bigger, more bombastic.
More masculine.
Whereas Szekszárd, yeah, more masculine. And Szekszárd is, I think, quite mellow, quite. Our landscape is like that as well. It's, charming little hills. It's really, once you come here, you understand it. I had once during the masterclass a Portuguese viticulture professor, and he came from the Douro, and he said, Douro viticulture is this heroic viticulture. And this stuck with me somehow, and I came home and I looked out here and I said, Szekszárd is not really heroic. Anyways, it's like if you talk about the Lord of the Rings, it's kind of like Hobbiton. So it's like it's cute, and in the wine style as well. It's not harsh, not very big. Even our international wines are, I think. Sure, you notice the tannins, but always fruit forward in this approach.
And if you could then maybe drink some Kékfrankos, what do you say? Just
sure.
Maybe with a direct comparison.